In the latest news from Dorchester, we have stories on the pandemic, school reopening, and a little more politics. To fill us in is the managing editor and publisher of the Dorchester Reporter, Bill Forry. Thank you very much for being with us, Bill.
Sure thing, Chris. Good to see you.
Good to see you again, too, Bill. I know you and Linda have a lot of your mind on school these days. Your children are starting. People are concerned about the Boston public schools, but start with the Catholic schools because they already have students going or zooming in, as the case may be. How's that working out?
So far, so good, Chris. St. John Paul II Catholic Academy, which has 3 campuses in Dorchester, is up and running 5 days a week, roughly at half capacity, though. The Catholic Academy, which serves grades K to 8, gave parents the option of staying home if they'd like. If their children aren't comfortable going to school or they're not comfortable sending them, they could learn remotely or they could attend in class. And parents have been given the option there to make that decision month to month. So for the month of September, those who decided to go in are in. They can change that for the month of October if there's any concern, if there's, of course, any sort of uptick in cases, or if there's a case in the schools. There haven't been any reported cases, positive cases out of SJP. There are other Catholic schools in the neighborhood. St. Brendan's is up and running again. Cristo Rey Boston, which is a private Catholic high school in Savin Hill. We featured them in a story this week, Chris, and they've actually been back in class since mid-August. Cristo Rey begins their school year earlier every year, and they did so this year, phasing it in. They feel pretty comfortable with their model, which is also a hybrid model. Some children and teenagers learning at home and others in the classroom. So the Catholic school system is seeing actually some growth because of parents who have decided, who've opted into Catholic schools if they want to be in a classroom environment right now.
You can think of hybrid as going halfway back to normal, but when I read that article, I got the sense that there are some teachers who were hoping they could flatten the learning curve too, right?
Yes, some of the teachers we spoke with this week, when we talked to teachers from both public, private, and parochial schools this week, all of them said, look, we want to be in school. We just want to be in a safe environment. The public school teachers in particular have been quite vocal about concerns about the school buildings not quite being, having a monitoring system for air quality, for instance. The public schools, of course, won't have children in classes on September 21st, next week, when they begin instruction. But that's expected to change through the month of October, phasing in children with special needs, high-risk children. Those who are homeless will be back in classes before other students in the BPS system. So, but right now the teachers are in training mode. They're getting their technical skills up to speed for having to do both, having to eventually teach to a classroom half full of kids and then teaching to kids who are learning remotely. It's going to be a big challenge.
Turning to the public schools, what about buildings? Because one of the things I picked up from the article in the Reporter, a lot of these buildings don't have what we think of it as, 21st century ventilation systems. So are they going to be able to handle children coming back in?
Yeah, it's still an open question. BPS Superintendent Brenda Caselius led a tour through the schools, 2 schools in Dorchester and Mattapan last Thursday with a group of reporters, including Katie Trajano from our team. City operations staff were on hand to show what they intend to do and how they are retrofitting some of the school buildings with plastic enclosures to protect staff and other children, of course. Working on HVAC systems, following state regulations to have windows open for ventilation, which is something that's going to be, obviously an issue in the colder weather months. Some of these buildings, were built in the early 20th century and aren't modern facilities with the modern HVAC systems, et cetera. So it's a mixed bag. And I think the school department is going to have its work cut out for them to evaluate them as they go through this process.
Looking at the city's figures on positive tests for the coronavirus, things are getting somewhat better in East Boston where they were really bad. But looking at figures from Dorchester, they seem to be a bit higher now. You had some concerns about parties, not just Blue Hill Avenue, but also around Malibu Beach. So what's going on out there?
Right. Well, so the mayor yesterday, Mayor Walsh, in his press conference, noted that there has been a slight increase in the number of in the positive test rate overall in the city. It went from about 1.5% last week to 2.8% this week. That's obviously of concern. There were 60 new cases reported yesterday. There were no new deaths, but still, this uptick is very slight. Given also the reintroduction now of college students to the Boston area, that may be partially a factor here. There has been some good news reported from the governor's office about really they haven't seen a huge spike in the college populations yet. There was, of course, an outbreak at Boston College, which was of concern. But what's happening in Dorchester, according to the mayor's report yesterday, is that they are monitoring this. Dorchester was one of 4 or 5 neighborhoods, I think, where they did see an increase over and above what they saw citywide. It was between 4 and 5% positive result in the testing. So that's also in Alston, Brighton, Hyde Park, Rosendale, and West Roxbury. But Dorchester is one of the neighborhoods they're monitoring. The mayor said yesterday they're going to open another mobile testing unit in Dorchester and Roxbury this week.
I guess maybe it's a silver lining in the pandemic, is an expansion of business opportunities for the bicycle sector. You see some of that around Ashmont Station. Do you actually see more bikes on the avenue now?
Yes, we do. And Ashmont Cycles, which is a business that I think we're referring to, just relocated into new space, bigger space in the Treadmark building right across from Ashmont Station. And the owner there, Jack Pelletier, has told us that they've seen a big boom over the summer months in people coming in to buy new bikes or to get their bikes serviced. And he does attribute it to folks, finding alternate means of getting around, staying perhaps more local, and also, looking for other recreational opportunities in the summer months and the fall months where it's great bike riding weather. We of course have bike infrastructure here now that we didn't have before. Not only on the streets, on Dorchester Avenue, of course, we have bike lanes, but the Neponset Greenway is a hugely popular place to ride and to walk. So I think Ashmont Cycles is an indicator of what's going on in the neighborhood. That's a great new location for them, by the way. It's a terrific local business, and that Treadmark building is a residential building mainly, but has retail on the first level, of course. And they're in a great new space, very prominently on Dorchester Ave now.
Turning to politics, the first candidate has declared for mayor, Michelle Wu, on the city council, but there could be another one before too much longer. Tell us about that.
Well, there could be 2 more before too much longer. Certainly, Mayor Walsh is expected to be a candidate, and our sources within his campaign tell us very soon you're going to see some new activity from his campaign in terms of spending, hiring. He hasn't been in full campaign swing yet. He hasn't even said for sure that he's running, but our sources within his camp say he's running. The other candidate whose name is being floated, not only by sources, but by her, is Andrea Campbell, who's the District 4 city councilor representing parts of Dorchester and Mattapan. Obviously, also a former city council president, as is Michelle Wu. So her candidacy, we're waiting to see. She has just said today, on Friday, that she'll have some sort of decision made public in the next week. And I think that would have to be the case for her at this point. Michelle Wu's candidacy, obviously, is only a few days old, but in the trajectory of this calendar year, for fundraising purposes especially, candidates now, I think, because of Michelle Wu's move, other candidates will need to probably speed up their process, get in the race or not, and start to do some active fundraising. That's the big thing. It's too early really to be to say anything conclusive about polling, et cetera. I know there was a poll that came out yesterday showing Mayor Walsh in pretty much a commanding lead over Michelle Wu, but it's just very early. It's also, the field has not been set. There could be more candidates in addition to the 3 names we've just discussed. But there is some urgency when it comes to getting a bank account up and running if you don't have one yet, and getting it filled before the end of the year.
And when I checked recently, I think Mayor Walsh has something like $5 million in his campaign fund. Wu had something like 300,000 plus. So and she was, I guess, the next candidate in terms of money. So, and even she had a long way to go.
She does. Now, she had that 300 something thousand dollars on Monday before she announced. I'm sure that's grown substantially this week. She had a real fundraising blitz going on online. But, all of us will have to keep in mind, it's very difficult to challenge an incumbent mayor, especially in the fundraising category, getting the donor class here in this city to essentially fund an insurgent candidacy against the sitting mayor who wants to run for re-election is going to be probably the biggest challenge for both Michelle Wu, possibly Andrea Campbell, and anyone else.
That hasn't been pulled off in this town since 1949.
That's right.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Sure thing. Good to see you.
Bill Forry from the Dorchester Reporter. We'll have more news in just a moment.